Hello, my name is Sydney. Welcome to Library Scented Life. Today we are talking about all the books that I read in August. So this month's wrap-up is much smaller than last month's wrap-up. I was very busy and I didn't get a lot of reading done, not as much as I usually like to in a month, but I am still happy that I got some reading done. 6 books is better than no books by a long shot. So let's get right into talking about the books. So the first book I read this month was The Waves by Virginia Woolf. August was the month of discovering Virginia Woolf for me. I read The Waves and I'm halfway through Orlando, which I'm loving. So first of all, I want to say that Virginia Woolf's writing is some of the most beautiful prose that I've ever read. The Waves is about 6 children and it follows them from very young, growing up together in like a cottagey area, and then it follows them throughout life and they meet up once a year and kind of like catch up on what's been going on. Each of them take very different paths in life and it just kind of is one of those slice of life stories, but like once a year. Actually, it might be once every 5 years. I don't really remember because this is the first book I read in August. I enjoyed seeing the different perspectives these characters had on their friends, and it was written very interestingly because it would switch every time they would meet up. It would explain things from each person's perspective, so you would get the meeting of friends from each of the friends' perspective. So I gave this 4 stars. The only thing I didn't enjoy was I did find it kind of hard to get through, so it was a little bit of a longer read for me, but I did really enjoy it overall. So the next book that I read in August was Bag of Bones by Stephen King. This book I've had for quite a while. I picked this copy up at a thrift store and it's been sitting on my shelf for about a year, so I'm glad I finally got around to it. I think it was kind of intimidating because of its size, and I also heard that Stephen King thinks this is the scariest book he's ever written, and it was pretty scary. Bag of Bones is about a writer called Mike Noonan, and his wife passed away 4 years ago very unexpectedly, and he's also discovering that their summer home that they would go to plenty of times throughout the year has something to do with something she was hiding from him and wants him to know after she was dead. And not only that, but the place is haunted by the people who used to live there back in the day when the house was created. So it's like a big ghost story. There were a lot of problematic things in it. Stephen King is very well known for having problematic words and situations in his books, so I am giving a problematic warning for you here. There are trigger warnings for this. If you go on a Goodreads review and look for one with trigger warnings or look it up, they will list them there for you. I don't want to give any spoilers because the trigger warnings are more near the end. So the next book that I read in August was The Death of Mrs. Westaway by Ruth Ware. So this book follows a girl who is struggling to keep everything afloat in her small apartment after her mother passes away when she was, I think, 18, and now she took over her mother's business as a tarot card reader on a pier, and she is struggling to make ends meet. And she gets a letter that is addressed to her that says that she has a grandmother who passed away and she needs to come and go to the will reading. The only problem is she didn't have this grandmother. This grandmother isn't related to her as far as she knows. She's never heard of her. She checked the birth certificate. Her mom's not related to her, but she really needs the money, so she decides with her people reading skills, she's going to see how far she can get into getting this money. So this book is twisty and turny and has a lot of family secrets and a lot of drama among rich people. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. So the next book I picked up this month was actually for my book club with my friends. So this month the book was The Thorn by Colleen McCullough. I read it on the Kindle, so I don't have a physical copy. So The Thorn to me is very reminiscent of Little Women in the way that it's a book that follows a family from when the main character is very young up until she's like 90 something, and it kind of goes through her whole life as well as her families, her siblings, her parents, anyone she meets along the way. So the plot basically consists of the main character, Maggie, who it starts out when she's 4 years old, and she has a huge family with lots of siblings, and they live in New Zealand, and they have a small farm, and then they kind of can't afford their farm anymore, and they're losing money, and things aren't going well. And they get a letter from Maggie's aunt, who is very elderly, and she's about to pass away. She can feel it coming, and she wants to invite her family over to her ranch before she passes away so they can spend time there, and when she passes away, supposedly she's going to give it to them. So this aunt is very well off and she has a huge ranch, the biggest in Australia, so they take the trip and they go and live there. And when they get there, Maggie, this is the problematic part, this is why I only got like 3.7 stars, When she gets there, Maggie is, I believe, around 10 years old, and she meets a priest. The priest falls in love with her right away, as kind of like, and the priest is around 25, I think, and he's kind of thinks it's like a fatherly love, and he falls in love with her, and that's one of the plot points that I did not enjoy, is throughout this priest keeps returning, and then eventually his love, he realizes, isn't just fatherly love, and it goes from there. I won't give any spoilers, but that's kind of one of the main plot points, so if that makes you uncomfortable, as it did me, and you don't feel like you want to read that, totally understandable. Overall, I did really enjoy following Maggie throughout her life and following everyone else in her life. There are a lot of chapters that were dedicated to certain characters, so you found out more about everyone a little bit, which I found really cool. I've never read a book set in Australia, New Zealand area that takes place in that time period, so I didn't know kind of what America versus Australia, like what they both had at that time. It was very, very different, and the things they used and the tools they used and like certain things like that. I just found it really interesting, and I can tell that that author did a lot of research into it to find out how those people lived. I just realized I totally skipped over one of the books I read. So before Death of Mrs. Westaway and after Bag of Bones, I read the Spiderwick Book 1, the field guide. So this copy is actually the original copy I read when I was like 10, and I read them with my dad and my brother, and we would read a chapter every night, and they're very, very short. This book literally took me like 30 minutes to get through. So it was just a quick read, but it was really nice to look back on it. I really enjoyed reading this as a child, and I would like to reread them all and kind of re-experience it. This was another 4 stars for me. I think I gave almost everything a 4-star this month. I don't know what's going on, but it was fun, it was quick. You discover the creature at the end, and then from there the series goes more into the creatures. So at the beginning of the book you're mostly just finding out who the family is, and there are cute little pictures throughout it, and you have like portraits of everyone in the family. If I can find one, I'll show you. So you have like portraits of everyone. It was just a really nice book to look back on, and I enjoyed reading it. And the last book that I fully completed in August was Unraveling Oliver by Liz Nugent. This book is about a children's author who writes a very famous children's book, and he ends up marrying the illustrator of that children's book. So the author, Oliver, one night attacks his wife and puts her in the hospital, and it's thought that she's never going to wake up from the coma again. So this book to me was kind of like a character study of Oliver. So it was from the perspective of everyone he's had in his life as they come across the newspaper scandal of what happened, and their emotions and how they met Oliver and their relationship with him, and everyone kind of has a chapter and pieces the puzzle together as to who Oliver was and like why he is the way he is. I expected this to be more of an active thriller, whereas it was like a looking back on what happened kind of thing. So it wasn't what I expected. I gave it a 3.5 stars, maybe 3 stars. It did capture my attention. It did make me want to keep reading. Alright, so that is everything I read in August. I did also read like halfway through to like 2 different books, but I'm going to complete them this month, so you will be seeing them in September's wrap up. Here's the total number of pages that I read this month. Here is the average rating I gave them. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm so excited to see you in my next video. Bye!